Hey everybody, and welcome to another episode of Prepper Talk Radio. If you're watching us on YouTube or Rumble, you'll notice that there's only two of us today. It's a sad day. Paris and I are here, but Shane has bugged out for the day. He'll be back. But we're here to catch up on some things we've talked about, help you get caught up, but also talk about what are we doing with what we've just learned, and what are you going to do with what you've just learned. So with that, let's jump into it. We are brought to you today by Jase Medical. We both got our kits this week from Jase Medical. Super excited. If you guys use medicines ever, like, I don't know, maybe you get sick, colds, need something like a Z-Pack, et cetera, you want to make sure you've got your own set of antibiotics for the year. And that way, if you're gone, if you're bugged out, if you don't have a way to get to it, you've got something. Amazing. It's $259, but we've got a $10 off coupon. If you use the link on our website, go to preppertalkradio.com, go to the gear page, and right there at the top, we've got all of our promos. So you can see that, but you can also see the Fortress Clothing 20% off deal if you use the code PREPPER. So use those links. That'll get you the deals. Jase Medical, awesome company. We love them. We're going to have an interview with their CEO in the next couple of months. So stay tuned for that. They've got some big stuff coming. And, as usual, help support the show. Use our links. If you have questions on products or gear, get in our Facebook group, get in our website, let us know what you have questions on, and we are here to help. That's what we do. And we are supported by you guys clicking on our links, buying products that we recommend to you, or in other cases, working with clients that we work with, experts, vendors that we can connect you with. So let us know where you need help. We'll put you in the right place to get that help. So as usual, Prepper Talk Radio, we are radio for the ready-minded. How you doing, Paris?
Doing good. Yeah.
Sad
that Shane's gone, but he's in a good place. As they say, he's in a better place.
He's in a better place. That's actually sad that you brought that up, because one of his favorite prepping movies is Tremors.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And we're going to talk about that in a couple of weeks, but one of the stars of Tremors just passed away last week. Did you know that?
Oh, no, I didn't.
Yeah, I saw that and I was like, oh, Shane, I'm so sorry. Like, he was my favorite character on the show. It's oh shoot, I just forgot his name. It's such a funny show. Like, it's such a weird genre. The other night I tried to stay up. Well, I didn't try to stay up. I was up. I was like insomnia. And so I'm like, oh, you know what? I'm gonna watch, the second, third, and fourth, however many until I can fall asleep. Tremors. And it was so bad. I was watching the third one. It was so bad. I'm like, how does he love this whole thing?
The CGI?
Just the whole show. Like, the dialogue, like, it's just so cringe. It is. That's so funny. You're just like, oh no, I really want to keep watching this. But like the first one, I love the first one.
Oh, me too. Yeah, me too.
The second one's pretty good. The third one, I'm like, oh. I think the sixth one is where I watched that one all the way through, and I'm like, wasn't as good as the first, not as good as the second, but it was definitely better than the third. I'm watching the third, and I'm just like, shoot me, somebody throw dynamite, like, get me out of here.
That's funny.
And what's funny is I actually quit doing that, and I'm like, this is like 3 a.m. I'm like, I can't watch it, and I started listening to our podcasts.
Oh, that's funny.
I'm like, I'm gonna go listen because there's so much good information we get that it's not useful to just go through it once. It's useful to go through it twice, 3 times, listen to it, download it, save it. But then, like, what am I doing with my brain?
Funny.
But if you're not putting this stuff into your brain, like, and you're not doing something with it, you're going to forget it. And that's the biggest point of why we do what we do. Helps us get better and put it into practice. And hopefully you guys are doing the same thing, listeners. Put it into practice, like, action plan it out. So today, Paris and I want to talk about kind of what have we learned over the last few weeks, and how are we putting that, or how are we implementing that into our preparedness practice?
Yep.
So what's your biggest takeaway in the last few weeks, Paris?
Well, for sure, I learned so much. I get to edit the videos, so I actually watch them again. I edit them. I get them all ready to be to launch. I get them ready for the YouTube channel. I put them up there, and I get them ready for the audio version for Scott to then post on the podcast. So I get to watch it sometimes in slow motion, sometimes in double speed. So I get to watch and listen to it a couple times, and it's really good for me to do that, because I'm remembering some of the things like I shared it, I did a live in our group not too long ago about my kit and reviewing my kit. And I realized, the information that I had when I built my kit was what I learned 3 or 4 years ago, which was good information, but there's more that I've learned since then. There's events I've gone to. I've met you and Shane now and had a lot of more conversations with the two of you. And so there's some things in my kit for sure that I need to do. I realized that my kit, when I put it together, it was kind of like a one size fits all. And that I don't like that
Doesn't
anymore.
fit you.
Yeah, it
make
doesn't.
sense.
It doesn't.
And that's most of the kits you just go buy are this generic one size fits all.
Yeah.
But to me, it's almost like they're trying to hit you with items that they think are sexy too. It's like all kinds of different fire starters, all kinds of different, like a tube tent. And I'm like, what is the realistic use of any of this stuff?
Yeah.
Like, I could save space and weight by switching these fire starters to a lighter, just a simple lighter. And then I could take duct tape and wrap it around the lighter. And now I have duct tape and a lighter. And it's like, I don't need a whole roll of duct tape, even though I have a whole roll of duct tape in one of my bags. Like, put what you need in there, right? I don't need I don't need 200 feet of cordage. I might need 30 feet. Right. So figure out what works for you. So like, what are some of the things you took out, or what are some of the things you added after going through those videos again?
Well, one of the things I did for sure was I had like 7 ferro rods. I'm like, I don't need 7 ferro rods. I don't need I had like 6 knives. One of the funny things was I looked at the knives. I'm like, I have like 4, fixed blade knives. I'm like, but at the end of the day, dude, how many knives is too many? Like, it's not, you can't, like, right, guys? Like, anybody listening out there? No, but anybody my wife asks me all the time. She's like, how many knives do you need? I'm like, all of them. I need all of them.
Which is a correct answer. You do need all of them.
But I don't need that many in my bug out in one of my bags. I can have a knife in different modules that I'm then, mixing together. I have one in my car kit, one in my bug out kit, one in my grab and go. Like, I can have them in different places, but in all in one is not where I need it anymore.
So I've got this utility knife that I had in one of my bug out bags. I've taken it out just because the functionality is not that great. It's lightweight, except for the fact that I've got
all the refills,
these other tools on it, right?
Oh,
which is great, but it's not as efficient as I think I should be. And then this is the one that I've always kind of like laughed at. Like, what am I going to do with a saw that short? Like, really?
Spend 3 years cutting a piece of wood.
Yeah. It's like, Stanley, do better. Like, that is just too small of a saw to use. Then I've got this other multi-tool that I carried in one of my bags for a while.
Oh, that looks cool.
It does.
It's got a crescent wrench on there.
But look how small it is.
Yeah, that's true.
For babies. Like, I've got a lot of cool stuff on here, like this little flashlight that stopped working that has a ferro rod on the side. Like, it could be great, but it stopped working, right? And then I've got all these, can't even get them out, Allen wrenches, and other stuff. I have all the instructions on it there, just in case I need paper for fire. But I'm like, this is a huge block, and it's heavy, but it came with one of my kits once, and I'm like, I've kept it just because it's like, hey, let's just throw this in the car. But it's like, what do I actually carry? I always carry a knife on me, and then I put a utility knife with inside. It'll hold 5 more blades.
Nice.
So I can pop it out and swap it out and do what I need to do. This one has a Phillips head, but you'll notice the long flat head. You can fit a penny. You can fit so many things in there to unscrew these. Like, I can use my other knife at the back of the blade, right? There's so many ways to open this up and swap out the blades and always have a really sharp blade. This is always sharper than my knife. I mean, these are designed for, it's like super technical uses. Making kindling, flaring out wood. Like, there's so many things you could do with that. So I've eliminated a second fixed blade knife, and I've gone to this because to me it makes more sense, because most of my bags aren't for like wilderness survival.
Yeah.
And that's the key. Like, what are you using? What are you realistically going to do? If you have no business being in the woods, don't buy a wilderness survival bag. Like, and I see so many people that are like, I bought this kit, but I hate being in the woods. And I'm like, then why did you buy a wilderness survival style kit This is why we always tell everybody, build your own kits.
Yeah.
Like,
And build it to what you
you
think
know
is
what
you're
you
going to
know,
use.
you know who you are, you know what you will and won't do. If you will never go hunt a moose, don't get everything for hunting moose.
Mm-hmm.
If you will never go fishing, don't get stuff to go fishing. If you won't eat fish, why get fishing stuff to put in your bag? Like, you don't need to do wilderness survival stuff. Like, if you live in an urban area, you need urban survival gear. If
Mm-hmm.
you're trying to bug out to another location, then you need to think about, what am I getting for that location and to get to that location. So yeah, it's funny because I used to get all the wilderness survival stuff, but I lived
Uh-huh.
like for a while in just outside of LA, and I'm like, it's going to take me a week to get to the woods,
Yeah. Yeah.
on foot. And I'm like, I'm going to die before I use any of this stuff except for the water and the water filter
Yeah.
and the food bars. And so you have to think about realistically what makes sense. So, like, what else did you switch out?
So I realized I had a ton of kindling that I didn't necessarily need, because you can find kindling more. You don't need to necessarily carry. I mean, there's some things you need to have as fire starters, sure,
Mhm.
but frankly, you can do some things for kindling. One of the other things I realized is that I have five kids, but two of them are in college, and so I have three living with me, and each one of them has a bag. And so not only did I go through my bag, I went through my wife's bag, and I went through each of my three kids' bags. And just as a practice, just as a reality check, I'm just being honest with you 100%. Like, I got overwhelmed, and I was like, there's no way I'm fixing all five of these kits in one day. And I
Mhm.
was like, I've got to go through each one of these kits individually. And I told Shane that. Actually, I was texting him. I'm like, bro, I can't do 5 kits in one day. Like, I'm told my brain is shot, especially after doing yard work and everything else. I was like, I can't do this. I was like, I need to modularize. I need to get everything in its plate. And this is what he texted back to me. He says, everything has everything in its kit. No, he said, everything in its kit and a kit for everything. And I was like, yes, that's what I need to do. I need to get to, like, I want to have just a module of all my fire stuff, just a module of all my, maybe some tools, just a module of, my first aid, just a module of maybe my rope and some of the things that go along with my rope. I realized literally I took a spool of paracord, 1,000-foot spool, and I bought that on Amazon because it was a better deal than buying 10 100
Yeah.
foots. So I bought a spool of 1,000-footers, and I cut it down into 100-footers, and I put each one of my kids has a 100-footer. Well, I had 5 kids, so there's 7 of us. So I had 300 extra feet. So I'm like, well, just throw it in there too. So I had like 300 feet of paracord in one of my bags. I'm like, I don't need that much rope. Like, what am I doing?
But you can take that one and put a knife with it and roll it up on a different thing and put it in your car,
Yeah,
or
yeah,
cut it in half and
exactly.
put half in each vehicle. Like, and modulize it. Like, in my car, I have jumper cables, a battery bank that we can hand crank charge. We have a small solar panel.
Mm-hmm.
We have flares. We have extra water. We have extra food. We have games. But that's my car kit, right?
Mm-hmm.
So my
Yeah.
car kit has specific items that maybe the rest of my stuff I don't need. I don't need jumper cables in my backpack. I don't, like, put what you need
Right.
in the modules that make sense. Like, and then also think about it differently. Like, this backpack could be used for 72-hour kit, 96, whatever you want to call it. I always say 96, but it's a small bag, but it's perfect for like a kid. And it's not one that they're going to go hiking with in the woods. But then my bags are actually built for backpacking.
Yeah, but better padding.
And it's like, does this look like a bug out bag?
Not
No.
really.
It's not tactical. It looks like I spent too much on a backpack for school.
Yeah.
And it's like, I can get around town with that. It's super light. It's got a waist strap on it. And that's what I switched. Like, when I first got going on the bug out bags, 96-hour kits, I had simple strap backpacks, and I went walking around with those, and I'm like, yeah, this isn't very comfortable. And at the peak of it, I had probably a 40-pound pack, and it was a mistake.
Yeah.
It was such a mistake. So now I have about 20 to 25-pound packs for me as an adult. For my kids, they're less than this. Well, one of them's 10, the other one's about 8 pounds. But I'm like, they can't really carry those very well. So for me, it's more modularized that I can just grab those and throw it on my chest. I can combine them into one bag. And I got
Mm-hmm.
my backpack on my back, but their bag on my chest, and then we can walk. We're good. And they're finally big enough that they can walk on their own most of the time.
We had some really good comments on the video in the Facebook group too. So if you haven't got into our Facebook group, jump in our group, because there's some exclusive content that we just shared just in the group. But one of the guys was like, keep your bag to 25 to 28 pounds. Like that's the max. Don't go over 30 for sure. So, and he was an Army Ranger, or I think it was an Army Ranger. I'm sorry. He was a Ranger. Anyways, I'm not sure which branch of the military the Rangers were. Much respect to the military, but I'm not that versed in it. But he shared, yeah, he and his wife built a kit, and they kept it. They had it, a lot of overweight, and then he brought it down to 25 pounds, like you were talking about, Scott. So that's the thing that I need to realize too, is like my bag should be around 25 pounds. I don't need to have some of the stuff I've got in it, or I need to have modules that I can add to it or take away from it that as needed, and have those things in different bags or different kits. And so that was one of the biggest takeaways I got from, listening, doing the podcast, listening to Shane and you, and to then just go through my own kit and realize, wait a minute, I need to update this like major.
Right. You're like, this isn't going to work the way it is.
Yeah.
And the same thing goes for like gardening. We had Buna on, and then we had Sid, and both of those two brought so much value to me. Like just understanding how you can alter your current landscape to have food all over your yard. Like Buna was talking about having currants, all kinds of different currants all over her yard. And I'm like, what's a current?
Yeah.
What a current is. I'm
like in a river?
That's all I can think of.
Yeah.
And I'm like, but it's currants, currants, but it's like black currants, red currants. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I used to make jams and jellies with these as a kid with my grandma. We'd go hiking in the mountains of Idaho around, what lake is this? I can't remember the name of the lake. We'd go camping for a week, and we'd go collect currants. And she'd show us, like we would do wilderness foraging, and she'd teach us the right things to grab and the wrong things. Like, this is wrong, let me show you why. But then we would make our own jellies and jams out of the currants that we'd collect. And now that Buna talked about that, I'm like, those memories are flashing back in my brain. I'm like, and so I'm like, okay, I need to get some currants. And I know where I'm going to plant them in my yard, and I'm going to redo some of my landscaping. And I'm like, I can do currants. Currants are great. I can, like, we've got tons and tons of wheat, right? We've got butter stocked up. We've freeze-dried some butter. But I'm like, currant jellies, jams, like, oh my gosh, like we need more stuff that we can make and then right, preserve, and then we have it. And that's part of what we learned from Sid, Prepsteader on TikTok. She's awesome at preservation. Like watching her content, I'm like, I can do this. Like it gives me confidence for the next steps. And then I go try it and practice it. So like this week, I'm focusing on the things I've learned from Buna. I'm planting my garden. I finally got the freeze over in our area, and I can finally plant, like my tomatoes can go outside, my cucumbers can go outside, like everything that can go outside, I'm putting outside now. I'm putting it into the greenhouse. Today's going to be a busy day of putting everything I learned from Buna into practice.
Nice. Yeah, I did last week. After I mowed the lawn, I measured a section of my yard. I have a section that was when I bought the house, they had a sectioned off as a garden, and they had lines running in it. And I'm thinking to myself, do I want to build this as a garden, or do I want to put a greenhouse in this area, just a huge greenhouse? And I'm feeling more like building a huge greenhouse. That way I can have things growing throughout the year, even when it snows or other things, or when it's a little colder, I can still have that greenhouse going and creating some food for me. And learning how she composts. And by the way, if you want to know which episode, it was episode 174 that we talked about gardening and composting and edible landscape. And Buna is amazing. And we're definitely having her on again. And I'm probably going to she's in our Facebook group too, by the way, and she's contributing there. So again, another plug. But as I listened to her in the first time when we were doing the interview, of course we were in the middle of it, so I wasn't really paying attention. But when I was going back through and editing it and listening to it again, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to take notes again. I literally stopped the editing and I was like, I need to write that down. I need to take some notes, because Buna shared some composting ideas and ways to create good soil and how to turn your yard into a usable land for growing things. And I was following, ever since learning about her, knowing her, I followed her Facebook page too. which is in the link on that episode. And you can go to its edible, it's Garden Inspire and Basil and Rose. And she put a picture. I went out to my front yard to get my salad for the day, and I'm like, what? That is so cool.
And it's stuff like we talk about simplifying our preparedness, like making it easier. And what she's doing is she's made it so easy. Like she's created passive preps. I love that phrase. But basically stuff you don't have to do a whole lot to maintain. The less you have to do to maintain it, the better. So like water catchment system would be a passive prep, right? Gravity fed water filtration, that's a passive prep. As long as some things are plumbed in and piped to where you need it to go, you don't really have to do any work. But in some cases you have to do some work, right? But the less work you have to do, the better. And like having an edible landscape,
brilliant.
Permaculture. It's permaculture. It's always there. It's always growing. Every season it's supposed to like produce fruit. It's producing the fruit.
Yeah.
Right. And that's what she does. And she does it so well. And she called it stealth gardening.
I love that. That was so cool.
Yes. You've got all this food that nobody knows is food. And they're like, people walk on by, like, but if you put a raised bed in your front yard and have all this corn out there and all, like, people are going to be like, yoink, thank you. Put all your fruit trees in the front yard. Yoink, thank you. Like if you live out in a, just farther out than suburbs, right? Past the suburbs, then you can start doing that. But if you're in the suburbs, like I remember having fruit trees in our front yard in the suburb growing up, and my neighbor was over there collecting apples all the time. And I'm like, what are you doing, lady? She's like, well, they're going to rot. And I'm like, they're not even ripe yet. Like, what are you doing? And she's like, runs off with apples. I'm like, if you come back in 2 weeks, you can have some, but don't just come over and take them all without asking. And she was the funniest old lady. She was probably 60% senile at the time.
Oh, wow.
And I just laughed. She was just the sweetest thing. But she had like that, how some people, when they get older, they start stealing everything. And they, all of a sudden they have got problems at like the Walmart. They're like, grandma got arrested for stealing again. And they never had a problem growing up. But like when they hit that senile phase, you're just like, oh no, what's happening? Yeah. And that's what she was doing. And she's just,
you gotta get one of those, you gotta get a little GPS bracelet or something on grandma to make sure she's safe.
Oh, that's she was so sweet though. But we had the tree in the front yard and people would grab fruit.
Yeah.
I'm like, the city should do that. Like instead of putting all this grass everywhere, they should put orchards.
Right.
And they should put gardens and they should allow people to use it. And I think that's a much better use of funds and money. Well, and for us as preparedness minded, we should be doing the same thing in our own yards. Permaculture items that are going to be there year round to save us money and to save us time. And that's what I'm learning from Buna. She's been doing this over 20 years. Like I don't know anyone locally that's more of an expert than she is.
Absolutely.
And I freaking love it.
And the other cool thing is she's been doing it long enough. She's so connected. She's got a lot of great resources. And she just added a guy to our group that teaches survival and wilderness survival. And I'm like, thank you for adding that guy to our group because he's going to be a fantastic resource. And maybe we'll have him on too soon. But just some really cool stuff. Before we jump to another thing, I wanted to just make sure that, sometimes people are like, well, I don't have a yard. What do I do? Well, maybe you can co-op with somebody else and go buy an acre together and have a yard together with somebody else, and you co-op together some land. I remember hearing about some people that didn't have a lot of yard. And so they actually went in together, like a little community, several people went in and they bought an acre or half acre or whatever, just on the outside of town or just, nearby. And they were able to then grow gardens and use that together as a co-op. And so it's been, fruitful. And then there's you might say, well, how do I pay for that? Well, if you have too many crops, there's farmers markets you can go and sell some of your crops at. And then you get to know the community even more. You get to help other people with natural foods. You get to make a little bit of money to subsidize what you're doing. And it just is a huge benefit. So that's one thing that I was thinking about, because I remember Sid on the episode, she was saying that she didn't really have a very big yard in her apartment. So what should she do, or could she do? And there's definitely things, hydroponics. There's things that you can do, tomatoes, and you can grow certain things in like just a balcony little garden. But even if you have, a situation where you don't have that, you can co-op with other people and get some land and grow a garden on that size of a land. I thought that was a really good idea.
When I lived in Arizona, I actually saw a garden in a apartment that I thought it was brilliant. They basically took a kiddie pool, those little blue ones
Uh-huh.
with like all the fish on the sides or
Yeah.
cartoons on the side.
I can
And then
see
they put rocks, or not rock, like bricks on top of that. So they had the kiddie pool, and then they had bricks, and then on top of the bricks they had all these little potted plants. And I was like, that's so weird. I'm like, that's so weird. Well, then a few months later, I'm walking by again. I look up and I'm like, and it's a screened in like a deck area.
Uh-huh.
She was on the second level. I'm walking by and I see it. I'm like, oh my gosh, it's a cornucopia of food. And when I talked to her, she had jalapenos, she had tomatoes, she had some cucumbers, she had potatoes, and she's like, how often do I really sit out here? I don't. But she's like, it's big enough that I can put 2 of these out here. She's like, I just did 1 for now, but I get food. I get tons of food out of this. Like
That's so
potatoes,
cool.
you can do a 5-gallon bucket and do potatoes. Drill out the bottom, throw 4 inches of dirt in there, good manure and mix.
Mm-hmm.
Throw 2 potatoes in there, and then cover them. And then as they grow, and as the green plant on the top is growing, you just keep burying it to just a little bit above the dirt, and it'll keep adding potatoes. And at the end of the season, you just dump it out, and you got all these potatoes.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Right. And one potato, if it's a russet, could be your whole meal.
Yeah,
Like
for
just
sure.
add stuff to it and you're done. And so thinking about those types of solutions from an apartment's perspective, but also she talked about barter and trade.
Mm-hmm.
She would take stuff and go trade with somebody else. Like she
Sid
takes
did, right?
eggs. Yeah. She takes eggs and trades it for milk because she's got a friend that has plenty of milk
Yeah, that was awesome.
and needs tons of eggs. And so like with her little garden, when she was in the apartment, she would take garden stuff and go to the farmer's market and trade. And I'm like, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
you don't need money. You can trade.
Yep,
If you've got something that somebody else needs and they've got something you need, that's an easy win for everybody.
totally.
So I'm going to go back to doing that. Like I'm going to grow. I've got a bunch of tomato plants I'm putting in. I'm going to start trading tomatoes. I'm going to start trading, beans and peas and radishes and carrots. Like everything that I've got, whatever I bring in, whatever I don't can, I'm going to trade.
Yeah.
And I want to get really good at jams and jellies like my grandma was. Like listening to Sid on canning and pressure canning and rebel canning.
I love
Like
that.
that's the coolest term. It's water
Yeah.
bath canning, but it's basically what they learned during the Depression.
Yeah.
Like, guys, come on, follow us. Get on. Like, we'll introduce you to Sid. We'll introduce you to Buna. Like, we've got some amazing resources.
Yeah.
And they're in the group.
Become stealth gardeners and rebel canners with us. Woo-hoo.
Right.
Like I'm excited because I'm going to edit the episode we just did with Sid because it's not as of this recording, it'll be out. It'll be episode 175. But as of right now, it's not out yet, but I'm excited to go through and listen to it again because she has some bombs of wisdom and just amazing things that she shared about what she's doing to kind of preserve the food she's growing. And it was neat because I think she lives out of town and on a farm and her whole front yard, or half of her front yard is just a garden. And then she's got her whole backyard for chickens and goats. And what was the other? Rabbits. That's right. She has chickens, goats, and rabbits. And I was just like, you know what? I want to get some chickens because she's like, if you're going to start with something, start with chickens. And I've been wanting to get a chicken coop for a while and start with chickens. And I'm going to have my wife I told my wife, I said, you need to listen to the last 2 episodes we did because we're doing it and we need to do it. And this is some great information to help get started. So I was super excited to listen to Sid and see her situation. I have no clue. Like literally one of the questions I asked her was like, so wait a minute, canning are metal cans. Like what are you doing? And she's like, no, it's jars. I'm like, jars are glass. Wouldn't that be glassing? Like what? I was confused.
Glassing is actually a term they used to use for spying on people far away. That's what glassing was. So seeing something far away.
So if you do canning, they will be glassing you. So that's basically the idea. They'll be spying on you.
I don't know about that, but like
anyways,
it was. So there's
it's jarring. I would say jarring
yes,
would be a better way to say it, but
it's called canning because the lid is a metal lid.
Got it.
And you screw it on and pressure seal it, and you're canning or compressing and connecting everything so it creates a secure fit. But I used to do it a ton as a kid, and then as I moved into like a single guy life and wanting to date and find someone to marry, like when was I going to can? Like I was working full time, I was going to school full time, I was dating too much, spending way too much money on all those. But it's crazy because you lose those skills. They're not hard to get back going. You just got to make it part of your life. And
Yeah. Or maybe that
with
could be
like,
one of those new speed datings. You see those speed dating memes? So
there you go.
if you're a prepper and you're single and you want to know if you're going to find the right one, invite them on a date to do some canning. If they
There you
say
go.
yes, you're good to go. Like you got one. If they say no, next.
Right.
Or if they say, what's canning? Next.
Right.
That's the new speed dating for preppers.
You know, from the last few episodes, definitely gardening, because that's peak in my life right now. We just had the last freeze, so it's time to go. But definitely, you know, I need to go buy more stuff for canning. I got a pressure cooker for my birthday, or
Oh,
pressure
wow.
canner for my birthday. So I'm like, oh, yes. So
Wait, you just got it then?
garden. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you just had.
I've
So
been,
everybody, Scott just had a birthday. Not going to say what day, but
yep.
he just had a birthday. Happy birthday to Scott.
Woo-woo. So, and I got some sweet shirts. I got a dad bod shirt for my son. Said it's not a dad bod, it's a father figure.
Nice.
Yeah, feeling pretty good
it.
about that. I'm like, okay, note, lose weight. You know, even the 3-year-old is pointing it out now.
It's your food storage, bro.
It's my survival kit. So
wait a minute.
That's another topic that we need to talk about is maintaining your health and fitness. You and Shane are doing a lot better job at that than I am lately. But I've been hitting the gym almost every day, doing a lot of cardio, trying to get my blood pressure down and my cardio limits up, so that if I do need to walk away, I can walk away.
Yep.
And right now, I could walk away and sit down on the neighbor's, curb for a little bit and catch my breath and walk to the next house. I don't want to be that guy.
Nope. Yeah, we're gonna have a guy on here who was he's an expert in fitness here in a couple of weeks. But what pressure cooker did you get, dude? What pressure canner did you get?
Oh,
you remember?
I don't even remember the name on it. I'll have to go upstairs and look at it. I'll post some pictures in the group. But yeah, I'm stoked.
That's super
It's funny
cool.
because it's my mom gave it to me, and that reminds me of something else I'll bring up in a second. She gave it to me. She bought it years ago, and then it's just so big, and she's a tiny lady, so for her it was just like, it's just too much. She's like, I had really good intentions, I never got to use it. And I've been acquiring stuff like that from her, because I'm like, I got a food dehydrator that way. She gave me one that she bought, and she had an extra and she never used it, and so she's like, well, here, you can have it. And I'm like, Merry Christmas, like happy birthday, whatever, happy Tuesday, whatever day she gave it to me was a day to celebrate, because now I've got that and I can use it, and I do. And now I'm going to have the pressure canner, ready to go. I'm going to study from all my favorite channels like Prepsteader. I'm going to learn better how to do this between now and the time it's time to do it. I might even just go to the grocery store and buy a bunch of produce just so I can can it.
Yeah.
Just so I can start learning, some meats, just so I can start canning it. Like the meats, for sure, you want a pressure can. Everyone I've talked to is like, yeah, pressure can those if you can. Rebel canning the meats is a little harder to do. They don't last as long, but you can still do it. But pressure can those is the thing that they're telling me. So I'm like, okay, people that do this all the time are the ones to listen to. People who've never done it, like me, don't listen to me when it comes to canning right now, because I'm not the expert.
Exactly.
That's why we bring on the experts.
Exactly.
Because they can explain it in a way that makes sense. Also in a truth platform of like, hey, this is how it's done. Don't just go do something stupid you saw online once. Like, make sure that the source that you're going to is credible. And that's why we try to bring on the experts and also bring them into our group, so that everyone that's joining the group, not only do they get questions, pal around with us, but they get experts in the group that they can ask questions to, and someone who's experienced with it's going to give you good answers.
Yep.
And that's the beautiful thing. So I can't wait to get that running some more, because it's exciting.
You teased us that you were going to tell us something in a minute.
I owe a public apology.
Oh,
I got reprimanded by both my parents, and I love them dearly. So if they're listening to this, they're going to laugh, because I told them I'd do this. So a few episodes ago, I talked about tools and all the old tools my dad has. Well, some of the old tools my dad has. And he's like, they're not that old. And so they're not that old, everybody. I'm sorry. Also, the oldest tool that he had, that I said he had, this really old saw, it's already at my house. I've had it at my house for like a year, and I forgot that I have it at my house because it needs new handles. I've got this crosscut saw from my great grandfather.
Wow.
Then it went to my then it went to my great grandfather. Then it went to my grandfather, and then it bypassed my dad and came straight to me. But it ended up in my dad's car or in truck, and then he transported it down. I thought he put it in his garage. I forgot he gave it to me directly, and it's in my garage waiting for me to put new handles on it. But it's a behemoth, and I'm like, I can take this and cut down big trees. What I want to do is hang it in my office behind me and just have it up there all the time, but it's too big for this wall
Oh, wow.
because I have like this little sunken back section. So getting the right tools, preserving those tools, maintaining the things that you have, so number one, sorry, Dad, I apologize for assuming you had that and that you've got older tools than you do. To me, they're better tools still. I mean, they still all work. Like I was in his garage the other day and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. I'm like, the tools that I've bought, my first round of like tools, I'm gonna DIY some stuff tools, like all those are broken.
Mm-hmm.
Like all of them. And I'm not even gonna say the brand name, but it's like
Right.
all of them are gone and like destroyed.
Shane
Didn't
shared the
last
brand
20
name in
years.
Shane shared the brand name in one of the episodes. So if you go back and listen to that one, you'll know which one. And every tool I bought from that thing, I don't have it anymore. Let's just say that.
Yeah.
And I haven't been doing this very long.
And now I'm buying other brands that have a better track record, and I'm trying to buy
Yeah.
more older tools. So the older the tool, oftentimes the better.
Yeah.
Like they build in obsolescence in the stuff we have now, and so that's something I also learned in the last few weeks is how to apologize, right? And then
Nice.
I also owe an apology to my mom about potatoes. She's like, you made it sound like you eat potatoes and that's all you got to eat every day, and I'm like, no. We ate potatoes all the time, and by all the time I mean like 2 to 3 times a week. And she's like, no, we did not. And I'm like, so then I started going over dinners. I'm like, okay, we'd have baked potatoes usually on Sundays. Dad would make this potato and hot dog dinner, potatoes and onions. He'd saute them up in a pan, and then he'd add hot dogs at the last minute. And like as a kid, like that was one of my favorite meals. And
That's
I knew that
awesome.
would happen on Fridays. And they're like, don't make fun of us for this. I'm like, I'm not making fun of you. I'm like promoting this was good.
It is.
And they're like, oh, okay. And so like it was just funny because they're giving me a really hard time because I give them a hard time. That's what you're supposed to do with family is like give
Oh
them a
yeah,
hard
especially
time.
your parents.
Everybody laugh about it and move forward. But like honestly, I wouldn't be prepared if I didn't have the parents I have.
Totally.
Like my mom took us to Utah when I was a kid, and we got all these peaches, and like we had to plan our seating arrangements based on how the peaches were going to fit in the car. And then it felt like years, but it was only like a week or two after we got home canning peaches before school started. Like it was the end of the summer, and it was just like we had peaches galore in our storage room, and we would get in trouble because we'd eat too many peaches too fast. Like, this is supposed to last a while, and we're like, but they taste so good. Like they were so good.
Yeah,
And so I'm like,
totally.
I need to get peach trees going. But you don't think about these things unless there's usually some kind of catalyst, and that's why this show is so important for
Mm-hmm.
people to subscribe to the show, listen to the show, watch the show, like whatever you need to do to set reminders for the show. If you turn on notifications on the podcast, it'll notify you every time we drop an episode. If you put notifications on YouTube, it'll notify you every time we drop an episode, or a short video or any other content. Like turn those on so you can be aware of it and be
Yep.
ready for it. And that will help jog your memory and give you things to plan and to do. And we try to keep things as season specific as possible. So like if you're listening live, or not live, but within the week that we post it, this is usually stuff that's going to be stuff you can do right away. You can action item it
It's
right away,
relevant.
right? Relevant right away. Like with Buna, gardening, with Sid, gardening, it's super, super relevant. Understanding how to do your own compost and fertilizers and getting the right plant nutrients, super relevant right now.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to have Dale from Fortress Clothing on again in the fall because it's going to be super, super relevant. Why? It gets cold.
Yeah.
It snows. We're going to have power outages. Like it just happens. And so having the right gear and talking to the right experts at the right time is going to be, I think for me, it's always been key, but I think it's going to get more and more pertinent as we see things tighten up more and more. I mean, right now there's what's going on in the world of like post-pandemic or current pandemic situations, right? What's going on in the world of emergencies in our daily lives right now? Well, there's some food shortages. We're expected more. There's definitely a shortage, and this one's impacting a lot of families, there's definitely a shortage on what?
The baby food
Formula.
formula.
Huge problem right now.
I
And
was in
we
Walmart
talked
just
about that on the
yesterday.
last.
I was in Walmart yesterday, getting some. I needed to get some distilled water because I use distilled water for like nasal cleanses, which is a
Mhm.
fantastic thing. You guys, if you're ever in a cold or sick, and do a nasal wash cleanse, use distilled water though. But they had no distilled water for weeks at the grocery store I go to, so I went to Walmart and they had shelves of it. But just next door to the distilled water, the formula was completely empty. Like
Yeah.
it was like a wasteland. It was crazy.
So that's why it's like, you got to be cautious of what, or not cautious, aware of what's going on around you, because there's so many families that need it. And I've seen groups that are like, hey, if anyone has formula or knows where they can get formula, if you find an extra one, can you please ship it to so and so, because their baby will only eat this type of formula. So if you can find any of
Wow.
that, please let us know. The other ones make her sick. And it's like, oh my gosh, like it's hard enough as it is, but if we're working together and finding solutions together, paying attention to what's going on. So we've got this formula shortage. Some parts of the country in the United States, there's diesel shortages. They're
Hmm.
limiting how much diesel you can pump. I'm like, oh my gosh, the truckers. How is that
Yeah.
affecting the truckers? They're having to stop at all these different gas stations in a row in those cities, in those states where there's a shortage, because they can only pump, 10
So
gallons
much.
each place they go. You know,
Wow.
and these are things that I'm listening to and hearing on different um, channels that I listen to. Same thing with the supply chain of just regular goods that we're getting from like China, like all the electronics and all the microchips from Taiwan. Like the number of cargo ships coming out of there right now is like a 20th of what it was 3 years ago.
Wow.
They're just coming over that slow, and it's because we've put all these embargoes,
Hmm.
right, and tariffs and everything else going on, that it's getting harder and harder to get certain things. And so knowing things are going to get tougher to get, now's the perfect time, if you haven't already gotten stuff, to get it. I took the opportunity this week. I did a live yesterday on TikTok, going through a lot of my preps that we bought 2-3 years ago and getting them reorganized and kind of showing people how we package it, how we store it, where it's stored, why we store it the way we do. I'm going to convert that to a YouTube video, but like, it got me thinking, okay, as we do other topics in the next few weeks, what are some things we should cover? And I think one of the most important things is keeping your preps organized.
Yeah.
Like Shane talked about, modularizing your go bag,
Hmm.
modularizing your needs. So we've got stuff in a certain area of the house in case there's a nuclear issue. We've got our bags ready to go in two places in the house in case we can't get out one side, or we can't get to them due to a fire.
Hmm.
So having multiple solutions is something that's right on my mind, right on the tip of my mind right now. That and gardening and canning, like those are kind of
Yeah.
my big three.
And every time somebody joins the group, we have questions that they can answer, like let us know where they are on their journey. And we're getting a lot of people that are brand new to this. And so that gives us the idea and know where to focus. So a lot of the stuff content we're going to start, making sure that we help people understand those very first steps to how to be prepared, how to stay prepared, how to get ready and be ready, and just really build a life of self-reliance. For too long, we've relied on supply chains, and we've relied on
Mm-hmm.
grocery stores, and we've relied on everybody else, the whole system that we have that actually is a really good system when it's done properly. But and that's where bartering comes in. You get one guy that's excellent at doing tomatoes, another guy's excellent at doing corn, and they trade. And that's genuinely kind of what our system is built on, but it's way more advanced now, where you have dollar bills that you trade for those goods instead of knowing how to grow something yourself that you can trade. So we're just really working diligently to provide content that's relevant to what the people want to know. So if every comment that you make, we read it, we try to reply to it. So make comments in the description, pardon me, in the down below, make comments wherever you are. The description is where we have all of our links and everything else, but make comments, come and join our group, be a part of the conversation there. Tell us what you want to know, what you want to learn about. I'm really surprised and impressed with some of the people that are joining our group. Some of these people that are like, we have farms, we've been doing this for 20 years. I mean, we teach survival schools, we teach gardening schools, we got Buna, we've got Sid, we've got a slew of a bunch of extra experts in there. And I'm just like, wow, I'm going to learn more from these people probably than they might learn from me. And so my skill was just gathering them together, Scott, right? Like that's one of the
Right.
skills of creating events is the gathering together of these experts and bringing them together and helping them organize their skill sets so that they can then teach that to everybody else. And that's a skill set in and of itself. And that's where I think, Prepper Talk Radio, we do have several skills ourselves, and we do know a lot ourselves, but also we're smart enough to realize that we don't know everything. And we get these experts in here that know more about certain areas than we do. And I think it was Henry Ford once he was on trial, and somebody was trying to say, you shouldn't be running this company because you don't know anything about cars. And he's like, you're right, I don't, but I have a switchboard, and I can push a button, and I can call anybody that knows it, that's an expert in every aspect of that thing. And they found out was like, well, who's smarter, the guy who actually knows everything, or the guy who has somebody at his beck and call that knows everything about that one thing? It's an amazing opportunity for us to learn and come together as a community and help each other grow. And what your strength is might be my weakness, and what my strength is might be your weakness, and together we'll be stronger. And that's just what we want to do. That's definitely our whole purpose, is to bring together, give you the mindsets and the skill sets necessary to be able to survive and thrive.
Absolutely. And with that, the action item for you guys to take today, this week, this month, whatever in your life, is do something that's going to help you be better prepared. Develop a skill, work on knowledge. If you can go buy more preps, go buy more preps. If you can build something to create more preps, build something to create more preps. If you're ready to do a garden, World War I and II, there was a big thing. It was called victory gardens, right? And they were gardens for defense. And I think that's the funniest thing, gardens for defense.
Nice.
Well, how am I going to defend myself with a garden? Well, by creating a garden, you're creating resiliency in your own life. You're shortening your supply chain. You're ensuring that you're going to have food. So with food comes strength.
Yep.
Put the right stuff in your body, you're going to be able to think clearly. You're going to have the energy you need to do things. So if you can, even in an apartment, figure out a way to do a garden. There's so many resources in our group, so many resources on the web. Like start now. Take some initiative. And if that's not your thing, find something else that's your thing and make that your next step this week, this month, this year. And with that, we're going to sign out for the day. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for tuning in. It means a lot to us that we have such an amazing connected audience. You guys are fantastic. If you're not in the group yet, get in the group. If you're not subscribing on YouTube, go find us, Prepper Talk Radio. Hit subscribe, turn on notifications. Same thing on your podcast. Wherever you listen to podcasts, hit subscribe and turn on notifications. You will be notified the minute we drop any new content. And don't forget, if you need your medical supplies still, get on our website, go to preppertalkradio.com, click on the Jase Medical link under our Gear Favorites page. It will give you $10 off your antibiotics. This is awesome. It's a year's pack. So if something happens and you need something right away, you've got it right away. You don't have to wait. You don't have to. Let's take some proactive time right now to get better prepared. Do something today to help you every day from now on. Thanks for tuning in. This has been Prepper Talk Radio. I'm Scott. Paris is here. Shane will be back in on our next episode. Thanks for listening. We'll catch you next time.
Take care, guys.